Hey everyone, I'm Jason, and this is your commentary on Matthew chapter 17. This is an amazing chapter that really demonstrates Jesus' omniscience and his omnipotence. It's going to be broken down into 5 sections. The first part shows Jesus as the Son of God. The second one shows him as the Son of Man. The third section, we're going to see Jesus as the mover of mountains. He's also the sacrificial lamb. And lastly, we're going to see him as the prince who rules over everything. After 6 days, Jesus took Peter, James, and John, the brother of James, with him. He led them up on a high mountain. They were all alone. There in front of them, his appearance was changed. His face shone like the sun. His clothes became as white as the light. Just then, Moses and Elijah appeared in front of them. Moses and Elijah were talking with Jesus. Peter said to Jesus, "Lord, it is good for us to be here. If you wish, I will put up 3 shelters. One will be for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." Now, right here, it's Peter, James, and John. They're known as like the inner circle, the closest ones to Jesus. Jesus is up on the mountain with Moses and Elijah, the very symbols of the law and the prophets, who, with the law and the prophets combined, you see Jesus in his full radiance and in glory. So it's a phenomenal thing to see. And Peter, he's very well intentioned. He's with Moses, Elijah, and Jesus, and he says, "Hey, let me build you guys some booths," because he doesn't know what else to do. I mean, I don't think I would know what to do in that situation. And luckily, Peter did put Jesus' name first, but then he's also saying that he wants to build booths for Moses and Elijah. But the whole purpose of Moses and Elijah was to point back to Jesus. The whole purpose of the law and the prophets is to point to Jesus. And we see that in the very next part. While Peter was still speaking, a bright cloud covered them. A voice from the cloud said, "This is my son, and I love him. I am very well pleased with him. Listen to him." When the disciples heard this, they were terrified. They fell with their faces to the ground, but Jesus came and touched them. "Get up," he said. "Don't be afraid." When they looked up, they saw no one except Jesus. So even Peter, with his well intention, God spoke through the cloud, and he pointed back to Jesus. He says, "This is my son, and I love him." And that's where our focus should always be. It's good to read the Old Testament. It's good to read the Bible and learn about the law and the prophets and everything else. But the entire Bible, all 66 books, more if you're Catholic, point back to Jesus. That's the whole purpose of the Bible, is to reveal to us the very character and nature of Jesus. They came down the mountain. On the way down, Jesus told them what to do. "Don't tell anyone what you have seen," he said. "Wait until the Son of Man has been raised from the dead." The disciples asked him, "Why do the teachers of the law say that Elijah has to come first?" Jesus replied, "That's right. Elijah is supposed to come and make all things new again. But I tell you, Elijah has already come. People didn't recognize him. They have done to him everything they wanted to do. In the same way, they are going to make the Son of Man suffer." Then the disciples understood that Jesus was talking to them about John the Baptist. Several ways to interpret this, and all of them have some legitimacy to them. Either John the Baptist was Elijah, or, much like Elisha received the mantle of Elijah back in the Old Testament, in the same way that mantle or the role of Elijah could have been passed down to John the Baptist. And that was to be the forerunner, to make way for the coming Messiah. He says here that in the same way how they treated Elijah, or in this case John the Baptist, that's exactly how they're going to be treating the Son of Man. And so we see Jesus not only as the Son of God, but also known as the Son of Man, the Messiah, the one who comes from us, and a foreshadow of his death as well. When they came near the crowd, a man approached Jesus. He got on his knees in front of him. "Lord," he said, "have mercy on my son. He shakes wildly and suffers a great deal. He often falls into the fire or into the water. I brought him to your disciples, but they couldn't heal him." So it sounds like his son is epileptic here. "You unbelieving and evil people," Jesus replied. He's not talking to the man who has the son. He's talking to his own disciples. "How long do I have to stay with you? How long do I have to put up with you? Bring the boy here to me." Jesus ordered the demon to leave the boy, and it came out of him. He was healed at that moment. Then the disciples came to Jesus in private. They asked, "Why couldn't we drive out the demon?" He replied, "Because your faith is much too small. What I'm about to tell you is true. If you have faith as small as a mustard seed, it is enough. You can say to this mountain, 'Move from here to there,' and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you." And I firmly believe this. In their own ability, the disciples had no control. They weren't able to move a mountain. They weren't able to even heal a demon-possessed boy. But that's because they were trying to do it in their own strength. Their faith had to be in the very God that they saw on the mountain just before this passage. That type of God who created everything, including us, is fully capable of doing anything. In ourselves, we can't do anything. But if God asks us to do something, if it's in his will, he will give us the means to do it. Even something like moving a mountain, as impossible as that may seem. Now, we may not be asked to move physical mountains, but there may be mountain-sized obstacles in our life, difficulties that just seem impossible for us. And it's true, it is impossible for us on our own, but it's not impossible for God. They came together in Galilee. Then Jesus said to them, "The Son of Man is going to be handed over to men. They will kill him. On the third day he will rise from the dead." Then the disciples were filled with deep sadness. He keeps saying this. This is not the first time. Jesus keeps saying that his purpose is to die and to rise from the dead. And yet the disciples who were with him the entire time seem to overlook that. They're filled with sadness because they hear the first part, that he's going to die, but not the second part. For them, it is inconceivable that the Messiah would die. This is because for them, the understanding of the Messiah was that he would set them free, that they would be victorious. But they're thinking narrow-mindedly. They're thinking about being victorious over Rome, being set free from Rome, being established as a physical kingdom on earth again. When Jesus' purpose is not to overthrow Rome, but to have victory over sin itself. It's a completely different thing. And Jesus keeps coming back to, that's his purpose. And they're still not getting it. Jesus and his disciples arrived in Capernaum. There, the people who collect the temple tax came to Peter. They asked him, "Doesn't your teacher pay the temple tax?" "Yes, he does," he replied. He doesn't. He will in a moment, and we'll get to that. Peter probably wants to think that he's saving Jesus' face, right? Like he doesn't want to make him look bad or anything. So he's going to say, well, of course he pays the temple tax. When Peter came into the house, Jesus spoke first. "What do you think, Simon?" he asked. "Who do the kings of the earth collect taxes and fees from? Do they collect them from their own children or from others?" So Jesus knew what was going on before Peter even arrived back to the house. "From others," Peter answered. "Then the children don't have to pay." Jesus said to him, "But we don't want to make them angry. So go to the lake and throw out your fishing line. Take the first fish you catch. Open its mouth. There you will find the exact coin you need. Take it and give it to them for my tax and yours." So there is a tax for the temple. Anyone who uses the temple would pay the tax. And Jesus is saying, if a king sets out a tax, does he tax his own children, or does he tax the people who are below him? And the answer is he taxes the people, and that money goes back to pay for the king's things and his family's things. So Jesus is the son of the king. Jesus practically owns the temple. It's his. So why would Jesus have to pay tax on the temple? He doesn't. But in his omniscience, he tells Peter to go to a pond with a fishing line. He knows exactly where the pond is. He tells him where to cast it in, because he knows exactly where a fish will be, and that on that very first try, that fish will have in its mouth enough tax money in a single coin to pay for both Peter and Jesus himself. So what does this tell us? Other than the fact that he's omniscient and he's able to do this, it also tells us that although Jesus had the right to not pay the temple tax, not every right that we have, we should act on. If it were a moral issue, then absolutely stick by your rights. But sometimes there's things that pop up that it's not a moral issue. And although we may have the right to do something, for the conscience of the other person, perhaps we should refrain. So in this very short chapter, we learn a lot about Jesus' divinity. We can't fault the disciples. The disciples definitely have their own problems, but in all honesty, if we were in the same situation, we have short memories. We have very slight understanding of Scripture and of who Jesus is. So I think it'd be wise for us to take a moment, just after this video is done, pick out one thing, one characteristic of Jesus. Is it he's the Son of God or the Son of Man? He's a mountain mover. He's a sacrifice, or he's the Prince of Princes. Pick out one thing and just consider that maybe we're familiar with the term, but we haven't really understood the implications that has for us. Well, that's it for our commentary on Matthew chapter 17. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you guys next time.